Hello everyone, I'm back with another Marvel Legends review, and this one is long overdue because my Apocalypse got a little bit held up in the post, but he's here now and I'm very pleased to finally be able to review him in full. This is another deluxe or oversized figure in the Marvel Legends line, and what would normally be reserved for a builder figure, but we've had a few builder figure Apocalypses in the past, and I'm really delighted Hasbro have released this one single carded on his own without the need to buy an additional 6 or 7 action figures to build him. And this figure is part of the Marvel Legends Retro line as well, which is a nostalgic throwback to the figures that were released in the 90s under Toy Biz. And most of those figures were associated in some way with the various animated series that were out at the time. Now, this figure is no exception. We actually did get an Apocalypse all the way back in the early 90s with this card art, which is fantastic to see this design again. Admittedly, the version of Apocalypse was a little bit different because that was a comic book accurate version of Apocalypse that we saw back in the 90s, so the card art was a little bit different when it comes to that image of Apocalypse there, but what they have done is they've given us this version of Apocalypse, which is the animated series version of the character, which is a huge win for people like me who really loved this animated series growing up and love this character in particular. It is of course the first time that we've had Apocalypse in these colours in this line. Now, being a fan and having grown up in the 90s, I love this nostalgic approach and I absolutely love seeing this card art scaled up, even bigger than the 6-inch, of course, because this version of Apocalypse is roughly about 7 inches tall, so the card art is even bigger again. I love seeing it in this scale. I think this card art is beautiful and it's fantastic seeing it after all these years. Now if we flip it over, we have the same design pattern that we used to see in the old Toy Biz cards, and then we have an image of the figure itself and the various bits and pieces that it comes with. A little bit of small print there as well, and a little bit of bio about the character, but all in all, very nicely designed. Now this is an oversized bulky figure, so he's quite impressive as soon as you release him from the packaging, just due to his sheer size and power. I think this is a great looking figure. If we look at this head sculpt, I think we've seen multiple different Apocalypse head sculpts across the years, so there's nothing too surprising here, but I have to say I really love the paint apps on this sculpt in particular. He does come with 2 heads. This is his scowling head, which I really like this. I think this is a brand new mould. I don't think we've seen this sculpt before, but I could be wrong on that. But I do love the attention to detail, the various paint washes running over his face really make him look really textured, and there's like a lot of life there. So I think this looks really good. And as you can see from this image here, from the animated series, these are definitely the Apocalypse colours from that animated series in the 90s. Now if we look at the body sculpt, what's interesting here is that I think they've recycled a lot of pieces that we've seen before on various other builder figures and indeed Apocalypse figures in the past. But I think what's really surprised me about this body is the fact that there's no shading here whatsoever. There's no fine detailing, there's no paint washes to really draw out some of the detail that's in the sculpt, which would have been really appreciated. Now, I suppose the counter argument would be they haven't done that because they want to replicate what was in the animated series and bring out those brighter colours, but then that begs the question, why isn't there cell shading as we see in the other X-Men animated series line to keep them consistent? So this seems to be a slight incongruous release that doesn't really seem to fit in one camp or the other, although definitely in terms of the design, this has to be harking back to the animated series version of the character. He does come with his plastic tubes, which fit nicely into the sockets in his lower back and in his arm gauntlets, and these are fairly flexible so that they'll allow him to really get the most out of his articulation and strike any pose that you want him to. He does come with multiple hands, but I did want to point out that the hands that are in packaging that are attached to the figure when you open them up are these open hands. I just wanted to point out the amount of detail that we see here in ridging, and again, how great this would have been if we'd had a little bit of paint apps, a paint wash over this to really draw that out. Likewise, we can say the same thing about his legs and his feet there. There's an awful lot of detail here in this sculpt. It's very nicely done, so it's just a shame that we couldn't just had a little bit of a black wash run out of this, just really pull out some of those finer details. So, articulation. Well, he does have a ball joint in his head, in the neck there, but as you can see, it is a little bit limited by that plastic hard neck piece that he's got around his neck. So he will struggle to get his head around. You can lift his head up and over it, but it's not very comfortable and you are in danger of just popping it off. Now, he can move it plenty within the range within that collar, but it's a bit tricky, a bit limited here. He does have ball joints in the shoulders though, that will allow his arms to kick up and out, which is fantastic. He's got that that complementary bicep swivel, which is great, and then he's got a single joint at the elbow there, allowing the arm to hinge to about 90 degrees. There is a pin swivel at the wrist, allowing that hand to rotate all the way around and of course hinge forwards and backwards. There's a swivel at the waist, allowing the figure to move from side to side. There is an ab crunch, but I couldn't really get very much out of this. Yes, he will move forwards and backwards, but there's a lot of resistance and it never really holds its place. So this is a bit of a fail. Now, he does have ball joints at the hips that allow the legs to kick all the way out. Of course, there's a complementary thigh swivel there as well. The legs will kick forwards, they'll kick backwards a little bit. There's a double joint at the knee, so that lower leg can kick all the way back. And then there is this fantastic ball joint at the ankle as well that allow the foot to hinge forwards and backwards, but also swivel from side to side. I was really super delighted to see that this figure comes with a number of fantastic accessories which I wasn't expecting. So first up, he comes with an extra serious head, which I think is quite nicely done. I think we may have seen this before, but again, just look at the paint taps on that. I think it looks absolutely fantastic, especially around the eyes. He comes with an extra pair of closed fists as well, but then more impressively, he comes with this arm cannon, which I think looks fantastic and has been missing from pretty much every other Apocalypse release across the years, so I love this. Along with that, he comes with some blast effects as well that accompany this, and I think this looks really, really cool. So here is that extra serious head sculpt. I think this looks absolutely fantastic. As I said, I love the paint taps on this, and this has definitely caught the essence of this character, I think, when he's in a more serious, somber mood. This looks brilliant. Now, to swap out the hand, you're going to have to remove the piping, you're going to have to remove his hand and the gauntlet because that will slide off, which is a very cool feature. Then you can take the arm cannon, slide that into position, it will click into place, and then you can replace the piping at the bottom there. And wow, when you've done this, this looks so cool. This creates such a different look for this character, and it's really impressive, and it's really nice to see this character go on the offensive. So I think this looks great all by itself, but it is only enhanced when we add those blast effects, which look absolutely tremendous. I absolutely love the way this looks, and I think this is definitely a wonderful addition, a very, very excellent choice. And just to show you how he scales against other characters, here he is against the Marvel Legends X-Men Animated Series Retro Wolverine figure. As you can see, obviously, Wolverine does tend to scale a little bit shorter anyway, but there's a huge height differential between these two characters, which look absolutely brilliant. Here is Cyclops, just to give you a sense of a more traditional 6-inch action figure. Again, from the same series. These look absolutely phenomenal together. I love these brighter colours. I'm, as I said, a huge fan of the X-Men Animated Series, so I love that we have this version of Apocalypse to go alongside those figures. And as I said a lot throughout last year, this line has fast become my favourite Marvel Legends line in recent years. So then, in terms of final thoughts, well, I think you can probably tell I'm a huge fan of this release. I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job. For me, it is a 4-star figure. I think this figure is absolutely tremendous. I had to wait a little bit longer than I was expecting to get hold of him, but I was really delighted when I did. He did not disappoint. I think this is a fantastic figure. I love how we get all these different accessories, the alternate heads, the fantastic paint apps in those head sculpts are brilliant. The arm cannon with these blast effects just really finishes this figure off, and I love all the bits and pieces, and I love the fact that this is representative of the animated series version of Apocalypse, which I think is long overdue and just looks absolutely tremendous. I'm overall just very, very happy with this figure. So why have I only given 4 stars instead of 5? Well, I got to be honest, I did debate this. I went backwards and forwards because I kind of wanted to give him 5 because I do love this figure. But on technical grounds, I felt I had to remove a scar just because of the articulation and some of the paint apps that I mentioned there. It would have been nice to have had a bit more of a wash running through this figure to bring out some of the details. But more than that, it is the articulation. The fact that we can't get much out of the head sculpt because of that plastic collar there is frustrating. But worst of all, would have to be the ab crunch, which doesn't really give me what I want. Like it doesn't click into place the way I think it should, and it doesn't really hold its position. So it feels a little bit redundant and a bit disappointing. But other than that, I do think that this is an absolutely tremendous release. I really, really like it. I highly recommend it. I think if you're in the fence or you've bought previous Apocalypses in the past and you're not sure you want to double dip, then I would say it's probably worth it for that arm cannon alone. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.